All right, let's do this one. Hey guys, what's going on? Andrew coming at you. And in this one, we're talking about student debt in the United States versus Sweden. That's coming up. So this is going to be a difficult one for me to take. I'm going to talk about what it's like starting out in student debt. This one's for Americans out there and for Swedes because it's always difficult to try to explain it, what this is like. And, I'm a millennial, so it's very easy, especially for baby boomers, to hate on millennials. And don't get me wrong, millennials do things that drive me nuts too. Like, we can complain about things. We expect everything to be easy. I understand that, and I see that in my culture, and I don't like that either. But at the same time, in defense of millennials, baby boomers, you guys grew up at the best time in the United States when it was the most profitable. Education was a lot more affordable, and you could get a great job with great benefits right out of school. And we didn't really have that. We had the 2009 economic collapse. And some of the things that we do might be failed parent techniques as well. So just an idea out there. But let's get into my experience. I went to a university in Youngstown State, Ohio, and then I went to Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I both think they were great schools, don't get me wrong. I went there for education. And the thing is, right outside of high school, you're pretty much told by everybody that the only way that you can really have a good future is to go directly to college. I think in a lot of cases it might benefit you to work a little bit in the real world and then go to college because it's hard at 18 or 19 to decide exactly what you want to do with the rest of your life. But I went to university as well. Unfortunately, switching schools and some other things, it took me about 5 years to graduate instead of 4. I went to Indiana University and it was a little bit cheaper. It cost me about $12,000, basically between $12,000 to $15,000 a year. That includes classes, books, and housing because you got to live at the school. And the government loves to give you money to go to school, but I still had to take out some private loans on top of that. And one of the first things I don't like that I had to go through university is I was studying music education, but because it was a liberal arts school, I had to have a well-rounded education, which means I had to take math, I had to take English. You had to take all these majors in your first 2 years that's supposed to extend your knowledge to make you a well-rounded, educated person. But when you're paying $12,000 to $15,000 a year, like what a waste, really, to force you to take classes to give you a degree. Because it kind of seems like a scam, really, to do that because you don't need it for your degree, but it makes you go to school for 4 years, so that's great, I guess. So so you start out paying for that. So that was one thing I didn't like. And when you finish school, you have like a 6-month grazing period. Now, I met a lot of people that went to university that maybe they went there for a year or two, or maybe they found out that this isn't what they wanted to do. And that's, I think, the first tough thing is when you go to university, maybe that this isn't the career for you. I met people that were in education that, like, their final year of education, when they're starting to do student teaching, I looked at these people and I was like, man, you're never going to be able to be a teacher. You just don't have the social skills for it. But yet they were allowed to go through university for 4 or 5 years. And, they're not teaching now. Let's put it that way. And when I finished school, and was deciding to find a job or career, I made the decision to go to Sweden because I knew I could get a job right away, and I wanted the experience. I wanted to be able to travel. I thought that would be really, really cool. So, I'm glad I did all that. But I started out about $60,000 in debt, meaning right after high school, still not maybe the most educated person in the world, but able to finally get a job. I'm suddenly in debt by $60,000, which means no matter what I want to do in my life, I want to save money because I want to have a nice future. Maybe I want to have family someday and I want to own a home. Well, I owe $60,000 and I had to pay interest on top of that. So realistically speaking, you then have to find a job. For a lot of people that went into education, so I'm just using my field, they can't even get a job teaching. I would say that about 50% of the people that graduated with me are not teachers nowadays because it was such a competitive field to be a music teacher. Everybody wanted to do it, and they don't have the job. And suddenly then, if you're not working usually in the job that you studied for, you're probably not going to make the salary money that you needed to make, which gives you two options. You're going to have to pay less on your student loans. And if this happens, that means that you're going to constantly be in the hole and have to pay more money. So that's one thing that happens to a lot of people. Luckily, I found a job in my field, and I'm living in Sweden, and I consider myself making a good salary. I'm at one of the top percentiles for people that teach in my age group, so I'm very, very fortunate and happy about that. But the realistic thing that happens for me that it's hard to explain to Swedes is that 30%, around roughly 20, this is like an average for everybody, but for me, around 30 to 33% of my salary goes to my student loan debts. My student loan debts at this point is like $680 to $700 a month is what I have to pay. So to put that in perspective for you guys that are Swedish, it's about 7,000 crowns, a little bit under 7,000 crowns is what I have to pay. And I made some bad decisions, so I got to pay some credit card debt. Now, luckily, I'm paying that off. That is my own fault. I'll take responsibility completely for that. But that's the amount I have to pay. So if you think about it from the perspective of you want to learn how to save money, because to get out of debt, you have to be able to save more money than you earn. You know, imagine if you could save 7,000 crowns a month or invest it or do that. Well, suddenly you lose that. So that's what I'm paying every month, 33% of my salary, and I'm living in a country that's quite expensive. I deal with stress in a way that I don't think Swedish people understand. I mean, to put it in perspective, I have to struggle to meet ends means every month because I have to save money because I have to get out of debt. I can't not save money. And so if people are going to go out to a restaurant, eat, to me, that's like great, but I can do that like once a month. Like I can do something fun once a month and that's it. I have to budget around every single thing I do because if I don't hit my bills, if I don't pay my bills, I'm only digging a bigger hole for myself. The amount of stress that I feel here when it comes to education that I have to pay back, it's such a huge stress in my life that I think sometimes between my girlfriend or other people, it's caused little small conflicts because I'm stressed. You might want to go out and eat and do something fun, and I have to say I can't do it because I can't afford it. And I think it's hard for Swedish people to understand that, or people in Europe to understand that. That when I look at college now, because in Sweden, you still have to pay for some things with your university. That's something I want to say. So if you go to school in Sweden, you have to pay for your room and board. The government gives you a loan for that. But most people end up being in about $12,000 to $20,000 in debt, and they have their whole life to pay it off. And if they die and it's not paid off, like it doesn't matter. They don't go for it more. So it's a very simple system where the education part is free, but we have to pay for everything. So, I mean, and it also is a very small fee. So they're paying about $150 to $200 a month, like for the rest of their life or for 40 years or however long that they pay it off. So it doesn't really hurt them so much when it comes to getting a job. It doesn't hurt them so much if they want to change careers or anything like that. But for someone like me, this is what I got to deal with every month. Looking back on college now, I'm not so sure. I love the experience I have. I love living in Sweden, but I maybe would have done things differently. You know, I don't know if I would tell a kid nowadays to go to university because I think it's such a disadvantage to start out in life $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in debt when you're not even fully developed yet. And I'm not saying that U.S. college has to be free, but I mean, we're the future. If you think about it, children are the future in the United States, and we're not investing in that at all. I mean, if you're lucky enough to go to a good school in the United States, that's awesome. But then you're starting out $67,000 in debt. And some parents can afford to pay for kids' tuition, which is such a huge advantage. But it's such a deep hole to get out of. I think you might be better off doing something else. Because when I look at college, I learned a lot. But like, for example, this year, I read 24 books this year. And I learned more reading these 24 books in 1 year than I ever learned in university. I've learned more through experience, through marathon running, through education, through trying a YouTube channel than I ever learned at university. For we really learn through experience. And I know it's great to have that piece of paper, but it might have been worth it doing something else. And then if you think about it like this, let's say you want to change careers at some point. Let's say you graduate and maybe teaching isn't for you, maybe being a doctor isn't for you, whatever the career is you pick, you're screwed because you're going to have to take a pay cut to do something else, and then you're going to just be more in the debt, more in the hole. And then imagine if you have a kid on top of that. Well, now you're in debt, and now that stressor is going to be in your life. I think there's plenty of Americans that don't live that long due to the stress and finances of tuition. And if you're someone that talks about it like myself, especially as a millennial, a baby boomer is going to come on here and say, I don't want to work hard, and say that I don't care, and blah, 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 blah. But the truth is, we pay 1,000% more, pretty much, for our tuition than baby boomers ever did. And there's fewer jobs now than there ever was. So, looking at the system, I like that in Sweden, we're investing in children's futures. We're investing in education. I think that's awesome. In the United States, I don't know if it can be afford to be free, but we have to do something different. Or at the very least, there's got to be more jobs and careers where you don't need to go to university. Because you're told since a kid, you don't have a future otherwise. You got to graduate high school, and then you got to go to college. And college is not for everybody. And college has become this huge business of getting kids to stay there, making them stay in school for 4 or 5 years when they don't need to get cha-ching cash. You look at these universities, you see how much money they have, and how much money they throw in programs and everything else. And look, it's a fun time. It's a great time. But I don't think it's worth $60,000 in debt. So if you're a young person watching this, like I said, I don't know if I would advise you to go to college. I think I would really seriously advise you to work for a year or two, save some money first, get that experience, pay some bills first, and figure it out from there. But Europeans don't deal with this like Americans do. Europeans don't deal with this kind of stress, and they shouldn't. But Americans, we shouldn't either. We shouldn't put up with it, really. If you think about it, if you're sick, imagine if you go to college and then you're sick. We talked about that, that the healthcare system's messed up and the education system's messed up. Imagine if you got cancer and you're trying to finish college, how much in debt you're going to be. It's insane. And if we're going to invest in America's future and try to make it better, which is apparently what everybody wants to do is make it better, we have to admit that the way that the college system works in the United States is a scam at this point, and it doesn't work. And attacking me for being a millennial and saying it isn't going to change the problem. We need to do a better job, especially for the younger children now. I mean, we got to cut the cost of tuition down, or we have to change things. Because the way society is now, guys, you can learn everything you ever wanted to learn on YouTube. And if you're motivated to learn, there's an unlimited amount of resources to you. So to tell me you have to go to a 4-year university to be successful at this point, it's BS. It's not true. And we need to change this. So I apologize if this became a little bit of a rant, but I feel it's necessary that I have to talk about my experience, the stress I live with every day. Now, I'm lucky that I have a YouTube channel and I'm building maybe over time an alternate source of income, but that's what I have to do. I don't have a choice. I can't just teach. I have to have an alternate source of income because I'm trying to survive. So I'm motivated there. But for everybody else in the struggle, I wish you guys the best. If you're new to my channel, I would appreciate it if you subscribe. If you like this one, please hit that like button. And tell me what you guys think. What has your experience been in university? If you're an American, how do you feel about going to college? Was it worth it? And if you're a Swede, talk about how much you pay a month and your college experience. And I will see you guys in the next video. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.